This is part 3 of the Whispering Willows. Let's move deeper into the narrative.
Mr. Toady's Adventures. Mr. Toad revelled in the absconding escapism of having no confrontations at all with Sergeant of Police, Hound Baskerville, Judge of Owlets, Jurors, a flight of fancy birds of feathers that flocked together, and soon materialized into a compellingly absorbing tale betwixt him, the jailer, and his pretty little daughter, changing the result of his sordid fate. What would next culminate in a prison cell no better than a dark and dingy, musty and hollow dungeon, as if a prey of a giant spider, a prayer before an immense dragon. He lay prostrate before it, consuming him in a tangled fiery web, fully filling him with worry, woe and anticipation, hoping to see sometimes through bars of the barricade like a mirage of a sandy desert, his unfaltering, hazy vision of his gusty, trusty and his soulful mates, Mr. Water Ratty, Mr. Molly and Mr. Badger, reappearing as always in times of trouble. By tolerating every ounce of mischief in his bones and muscles, he lambasted and berated out loudly, rebuking his foolhardiness to spoil his name and status at Toady Hall, turning him totally powerless, a mite to be pitied, all because of a silly car hijacking. In other words, the very act of borrowing a handsome motor car and speeding on the highway further away into the call of the wild woods, he called himself stupid, silly animal, and just couldn't guzzle the impractical saltless soups of cabbages or cauliflowerets. Though prepared by the gaoler's daughter, a pretty kind and generous soul she was he languishing like a purple gnat or no inside the tongue of a lolling lady pink slipper of a beautiful bewitching lady on pitcher plant prison, he idly sat squatting down to his knees, flicking up flies and giant moths with a slick oily tongue that came fluttering by through bars of the dim-lit dungeon windows, and whiled away the listless hours, mumbling in sad sorrow, Oh dear Toady, pitying himself sorely begruntled and thinking of the useless trouble he had got himself into, sighing to himself, good old Mr. Badger, wise old Mr. Molly, kind old Mr. Water Ratty. Again and again, as if he was exercising lines like a sort of a mimicking parrot, memorizing to speak by heart, sick with hard lessons he learned of a grueling prison, meant for reforming criminals and juvenile thieves, with early morning squatting and rigorous training spells intermittent through the day, touching toes, spreading arms, straddling feet, jogging, jumping and push-ups, not to say flicking fleas and jerking into hops and somersaults, to aim tongue in cheek till practice makes perfect. He heard a squawk somewhere in the background. It was the gaoler's daughter's pet African grey parrot, Romeo, screeching away.
Little prison has caught the thief, and little Gretel is so sweet.
Little Gretel, the gaoler's daughter, took to cooking for the old toad his scrumptious supper and dinners, and was worried by the weight Mr. Toady had lost in the recent days of his imprisonment, not having any inclination to taste her superior stews, steamed rice and curries, pickled gherkins with mango, eggplant and lime chunks, potato mash, gorgonzola dressing and dill salad, sometimes delectable desert flies in sundae or fondues. Especially for Sand Mr. Toady, she had a love for pets, and found it very hard to digest upon seeing poor rich Toady wasting his precious hours in a grimy old prison. She thought to herself, stroking her bald beaver, a pub gopher as light as a feather, moustache parakeets Charlie Brown and Alice Little with black moustaches, Weasel and a little Jubilee, Gretel the golden ferret, was as slender as a dreamy water nymph, bulky and immense as a mountain of stone. All the critters surrounded her in a bright ring of a magic fairy circle. She could sit inside and make her wishes turn true as if in a fairy ring of magical mushrooms. She always hid them in a little yellow basket she carried everywhere with her, covering over them a warm blanket. Then made up a poem of her eccentric grandfather, Ferret Michael de Vassier Matthieu Herbage. She compared to an ape from Mars, and herself to an opera singer. In a dream she prided to become one day.
The opera singer ferret and the grandfather ferret, ape from Mars. Gretel, the golden-haired ferret, as dainty and slender as a reed of a water nymphet, bulky and immense as a mountain of stone, boulders of the rivers of reverie and daydreams, of an opera singer from moons, planets, and stars, serenaded to her pup Gopher, as light as a feather, as small as a dot, and a tale of the weathers. She sang Orpheus a tune for better of her dear old grandfather ferret, Michael de Vassier Matthieu Herbage, who practiced to be a stupid moron indeed, nothing more nor less than learning to be like an ape from Mars, in his striped pyjama pantaloons and shirt made of herbs for the herbivores: dill, parsley, tarragon, chervil, thyme, rosemary, basil, marjoram, oregano. All tales inside his scullery pantry he practiced to preach never to sin. With his colored bottles of taboo, he mastered the Ayurvedics like a holy saint named Saint Michael Herbage Archangel, and to stroke the cue ball so that it hit 2 balls in succession, as fast as a famous billiard player, Michael Herbage Pereira the Great, even to hit a ball in a hole with a club, golfer like a little pet pup gopher, with a comma and tail like a semicolon punctuation mark. Grandfather Ferret, the ape from Mars, started his work in the wee midnight hours on a bicycle that could, God blimey, fly in the blooming sky, with its sprockets, wheels, and winged appendages, gearbox, bells, and horns, made a desperate appeal, Grandmama from right below, to come home with secret of longevity and a span of life, to never turn old, creased, or sour like an orange, grapefruit, tangerine, or pomelo. By the dozens and baskets he carried from pixels far beyond, a planet named Youth for everyone who wished to taste youth, so blackbeard and blackberries, from a grandpa graybeard and his golden bicyclet, to be supple as eggnog of a flipper, Mad Hatter, Eggstein, Einstein, his father ferret gymnast and juggler who never aged by far, as his bottles of practice met with success and secret of ancient pearls of wisdom and pearls of divinity, called Vaidya preservatives and occult mystery, Vishoklas and Shastras, Namaste of ancient Indian history, a secret he divulged to all in his hamlet, to free of their bondage futile Babbage soups and baggages of garbage. Dear Grandfather Michael de Vassier Matthieu Herbage of Herbivores. He squeezed juice from all fruits and lemon peels, called squash of orange ferret, magic citrus wine and juice, even squeezed tears from those who cried to tears of joy, peals of laughter in a lighter vein, and sadness turned to a volcano that erupted with happiness. Old age in new bottles, its recipe never declines. Any fool or dithering idiot to fast forward instead rewind. Through his sublime experience, he recorded youthfulness rotund again, turning back the hands of time, a floribunda floriferous garland and tiara for young at heart, meddling with his magical Bobbutson's buttons and capsules. In other words, his tablets of ingenuity and art, till it dawned like a sun with a green Florentine, chopped spinach, ground nutmeg, tomatoes stewed, a soup dish on the seabed of yolks, the sunny side up, glistening with a dash of salt and pepper, or a sliver of Mooney King Ombroliet's silver omelette story, to confab and converse, roundels of onions, chili, garlic, and fenugreek, to play with fork and spoon, sun and moon nifty games, with sunshine, golden goose, Queen Juliet, that old Humpty Dumpty King Ombroliet's horses and men stuck fast to her feathers of gold, soon releasing her golden eggs of splendor, a good omelette of 9 handsome eggs, her grandsons and granddaughters, sometimes ham, bacon, and salami to go together with the weevil beetle loafers. They got along like bread, jam, and butter, or cheese and cold cuts, a string of sausages and meatloaves in jest. Indeed, her grandfather, Mr. Ferret, Michael Devassia Maffei Herbage, tried to dip a finger in the pie and all his fingers into different pastries and jams, scones, tarts, and cheesecakes, like a jack of all trades, but a master at none. By far subjects ranging from physics, zoology, botany, chemistry, and mathematics, to near-sighted philosophy and microbiology, to suit his palate of a varied tongues. A pinch of sodium they call salts of earth, for tasting purposes, I suppose, in his wee chamber like a chimera, changing hue from black, lemon, yellow, and blue to a sunset so orangey and golden. Like the funny ape from Mars, he straightened his posture and propellers, to the annoyance of Grandma Ferret Mary Rose Magdalene Herbage, with her apron full of splashes of Mediterranean quiche, quinoa salad, and zucchini tarts. She guzzled with red rosé or white sparkling wines, all within 4 walls of his invention lab. There were funny creatures of nonsensical lands, like toads, moles, badgers, and beavers, march hares, bunnies, stoats, possums, raccoons, shrews, voles, foxes, vixens,
weasels, and flying squirrels,
all waiting to climb up his many made-up ingenious hierarchy ladders, spires, domes, canals, castles, and towers, and up his grandfather's pendulum clock, which was too big for the shelf, so it stood 90 years on the floor, taller by half than the old ferret himself. Click, clock, tick, tock, 90 years without fumbling, his life a second's numbering. Click, clock, tick, tock, but it stopped, short, never to go again, when the old ferret died. All built inside his little wee lab chambers, of experimenting. He practiced with them and trained them for hours, like his lab specimen artists, where he lived in a rural village of Alonda, in a lofty bungalow, number 79. The kings, queens, and varied parodies of his little nonsensical hamlet had different personalities, each so different than the others, and tried to fit in like puzzle pieces of a jigsaw, with their obtuse and acute charismas, sometimes perpendicular as right-angled magicians performing the black arts. Many hats under one roof, of different sizes and shapes or colors. Sighed the golden-haired ferret to Mr. Toady, "Higgledy, giggledy, piggledy, all footloose and fancy-free, tried chasing a pussycat as large as a goat on a map. They hailed a flight upon a unicycle bike, and fit all in grandfather's the ape from Mars' shoulders and lap, climbing and distributing his branches of degree of philosophy with their scholarships and graduate caps, raced as they wheeled on feet instead, like tiny tots of nursery kindergartners, sparking electric circuits by pitter-patter of feet, right as rain indeed, over trains, pyramids, sphinxes, roofs, and buses on wheels, scooters, bikes, and lorries. They skidded, skedaddle-doo, skedaddle-skid, and stopped at traffic signals, and like children raced pitter-patter on legs, rolling further onwards, sometimes ferrying their boats with oars, a jamboree of lab specimen for play therapy in a playroom, behind the tiger pussycat, all followed like in a circus pandemonium, hoisted a flag and belled the pussycat finally in the tiny wee chamber of 4 walls. And the nonsensical rhymes soon rhymed of the opera singer golden-haired ferret, as dainty and slender as a reed of a water nymphet, bulky and immense as a mountain made of stone, boulders of the rivers of reverie and daydreams, of an opera singer from moons, planets, and stars. She serenaded to her pup Gopher, as light as a feather, as small as a dot and a tale of the weathers. She sang Orpheus a tune for better. The melody traversed afar, up towers, down babbling brooks, with funny rocks and stones, as huge as boulders to building blocks, for a writer, Sophie, a script made up, full of slime, moss, lichen, and froth. Down its hills, toadstools, whales, dales, and valleys, in the middle of a little lotus and lily pond, where the opera singer golden-haired ferret tried to drool, loll her pink tongue, and sing her song of the story of the wild wooded throngs.
Clapping her hands together,
Hurrah! Hurrah!
pleased at making an attempt at poetry and arts, having a shot at reciting it, like a great scholar of reverie and daydreams, like Gretel's inseparable pets like Dorothy and Toto, of Wizard of Oz. She like babes in the wood, Hansel and Gretel, working in a witch's gingerbread prison, broiling, stewing, churning milk into yogurt and making cheese, baking pizzas in ovens and stirring up cock a leaky soup in a huge magic cauldron pot. For a good 300 prisoner, stoats, foxes, peevish mice, hares, barbaric porcupines with sharp pin prickle, bristles that were punished for squatting, along with their pokey relatives. Inside an old property, squatters to their core, bamboozlers, embezzlers, and every tricksters, of corn artists and carnivores, storks, monkeys and cranes, even tortoises, squirrels, rabbits and tiny quails. She treated as her very own pets and sweethearts, and fed them with whatever rations were given to her to prepare food for the prisoners inside, like fruits and vegetables, sunflower and pumpkin seeds, to her birds of flight, whilst Mr. Toady rationed out what little was left in his imagination at the sorry instance captured in a strange dungeon, remembering every spoonful of thick cream of mushroom soup, beef stroganoff, Italian minestrone, salt and peppered ox tongue with parsley, rich creamy sauce, tartar sauce with fish fingers, chicken a la king, gaspeco, a fresh cold soup made of cucumbers and tomatoes, pear and gorgonzola salad, peppercorn sauce and roast beef, all prepared lovingly by cheeky chef Mr. Nuttles, the honest beaver. Even sometimes fleeting thoughts about his dear lovelorn admirer Toadus, Dotty Grimwald, daughter of Baron and Baroness Mr. and Mrs. Grimwald, the prudent owners of the saucy business of ham and strings of sausages to go with them. Not to say the wealth and luxury that he basked to glory of his great-great-great-grand-uncle's heritage mansion passed on to him, the great Toad Hall, do-dalling, dueling, Duliana mansion, that he missed so much. Even his dear animal fairy farm folks, the beaver, tortoises, pigsties, sheep pen, hens, cocks, bulls, David, his horse of the old caravan, and his horse stables, the stow, dogs, cats, and the weasel, his white mice, pheasants, and the turkeys. All sadly he lost that once dearly he cherished. Little Gretel, her long tresses of gold, fell right to her pink, rubicund, glowing cheeks. Wherefore, asking her father, the gaoler's permission to attend to poor little grieving Mr. Rich Toady like his fairy godchild, she was allowed to do so by her crusty, irritable old father, Wild Ferret the gaoler. Like an old, cantankerous, crabby man, who after taking great liberties to Mr. Toady's fat wallet lined with dollars and cents for providing him with some fine luxuries like bed linen and food, or maybe rashers of ham and bacon with poached eggs, the reason being that he couldn't bear to see his daughter mop over the poor animal. As soon as the golden sunshine girl, little Gretel, entered the small and musty miserable chamber with a plate of toast buttered sizzling with golden taps of butter, a spread of sweet pineapple jam, then he rose from his squat position with its honeyed whiff like a bee to a nectared flower, rather pulled like a magnet to sweet and golden-haired pretty little Gretel, a shiny little buttercup ferret fairy, and stood up to greet the little girl with a bow and curtsy. Gretel had tears in her eyes to see the handsome and charming, kind and benevolent soul suffer so terribly in prison days. Then offering her his handkerchief to wipe away his tears, he started to sob and whimper, crying bucketfuls of watery teardrops like a little grown-up boy all over the shoulders of the well-mannered and thoughtful gaoler's daughter who possessed magic hands, comforting the sorrow-stricken Toad with the soft and loving strokes. Mr. Toady complained about his sorry life in prison and his happy bygone heydays back at Toad Hall Mansion. She offered to wipe his streaming tears that had saturated his stamina as much his undernourished very body could take, showing upon his gaunt face and hollowed cheekbones, then offering him the plate of buttered toast with pineapple jam, patted poor old Toady. Addressing him as her uncle, she said,
Dear Uncle Toady, my father, the gaoler, told me about your craze for driving handsome car steer wheels and helms of boats of any and every kind. Don't worry, you learned a sad lesson indeed, and now I surely will help you escape the dungeon of darkness.
Oh dear soul, my dearest girl Gretel, light at the end of a tunnel at last. Mr. Toady rejoiced reading her name from the badge pinned to her grey pinafore and white blouse, as if she was a student of a high school, and he an unfortunate master Professor Toad, rather a washerwoman in distress, who he would soon turn into with some help from such a nice ferret maiden of honor. He always desired to meet such a kind and gentle soul, and now, not containing any more of his joyous outbursts, he whispered in her ears a great jubilant cry. I'm whoopy-doody-doo, so happy as can be. How can I ever express my gratefulness to you? What kind of a mess is this that I've landed myself into? I'll definitely shower upon you $100 note if you only tell me how and in which manner this would be possible to exit this hideous dungeon. Oh, how remorseful I am for my deeds. I guess no one can fully comprehend. Then the girl, adjusting her apron on her grey and white uniform, went on to whisper in her Uncle Toady's ear.
My aunt is a washerwoman here. Her name Jennifer, and she is the kindest soul. Her figure is almost your size.
Mr. Toady, quite insulted at a funny comment, went on to say, I don't think so, my dear. Do I have a very aristocratic nose and lean body, much like TV Tarzan? Ribbit. He meant V when hardly so, and looked like an honorable T, or super-exaggerated TV Tarzan, extraterrestrial Toady. With telepathic receptors or antenna, one could really notice at the ends of his funny face with its aristocratic humbug nose. Then the little girl Gretel, getting annoyed with his impertinence, replied,
You lost rich souls are all the same. You cannot understand the meaning of tolerance, rich uppity classes. All I meant to say is you will have to act and behave like a washerwoman, Mrs. Jennifer, my aunt, and she is beautifully bulky. Or even when you say how you shall exit this doomsday dungeon, do you expect to travel like Cinderella in a pumpkin coach with mice, horsemen, and frog liveries? I suggest you should take the next train out this daggone country once you are out of the prison gates.
She sarcastically jeered at the Uncle Toady.
Better be able to accept modestly the role that I ask you to act out, or else you'll be languishing in the dungeon for 12 months, and not to say missing out all those things you love, your friends and Toad Hall you cry and cry so much about.
Then bidding him warmly an adieu and promising to return back with her aunt the washerwoman's poorly tatty costume the next day, giving him a peck on his salty tear-stained cheeks, little Gretel, the gaoler's daughter, took leave. Mr. Toady dreamed the night how he always groomed himself before a party in front of a great heirloom, three-faceted Victorian vanity mirror and his royal douteur, male equivalent to boudoir. Generally how he would appear and behave with charm and charismatic appeal before his splendid upper-class audiences. Never failed the loving eye, especially by Toad's Dotty Grimwald, stealing gazes at the handsome charmer. She thought he had it all. A 5-worded handsome package, Mr. GCWPH Toad. Good looks, charm, wit, personality, and humor to go along with its title like a PhD graduate. Philosophical, hedonistic Dr. Toad. Giving himself away in sweet abandon, he just thought about her so often nowadays. Her sweet, encouraging voice, as she was floored by his clothes-horse personality in his stiff large clothes, short breeches and vests, vast array of shoes, boots and galoshes that matched, always admiring him secretly, as she used to tell him over a glass of wine or sherry.
Mr. Toady, oh, how I love it when you drive me under the moonshine and the romance by the starway stairway, panorama of our galaxies on one of those runaway boats through the whispering willow woods and river waters, like stowaways on a boat, and in runaway cars you always steer the wheel and helms and zoom me away to a different planet, on the run every time through wild woody roads, like your Princess Dotty of a faraway kingdom. Do darling doolings, how I long to be your Mrs. Dooliana Little Toadess of Mr. Dooliana Little Toad of Dooliana Mansion soon one day. Oh, Mr. Toady, how I love all the Mr. G.C.W.P.H. Toad. Attention, you sha. Ah, shucks, you do make me blush.
She said it as if she were all dotty over Mr. Toady, a replica reincarnation of his spotty loony uncle, Mr. Dooliana Little Toad. A blast of horn from the past. I suppose he smiled ear to ear, blushing coyly, but gradually the boyish white grin changed to a long old grimace from mouth to shin. Oh, poor me. Now I will have to act like an old natty washerwoman, and God knows what the menfolk should have to say to me. Maybe warm and snuggle up, roughen up to their thick, bulky shoulders before I leave. Being wary of the advantage they took of little older ladies, especially an eccentric washerwoman like Golden Ferret Cradle's dotty Aunt Jennifer, giving steely lizard watch guards little hugs and pecks before she left her workplace, and a sweet kiss upon their foreheads and cheeks too, praying deep down his heart he would give the correct answers to the clouds and clowns before he left the forsaken dungeon at last into the wilderness. The next day, little Gretel brought her bright yellow basket. This time, instead of her darling pets, it contained few strawberries she had plucked from her garden and a bowl of bland mutton bone stew she heartily had prepared for her dear Uncle Toady, along with a few clothes he would have to wear and behave as the odd washerwoman aunt that kind little golden ferret Gretel stole into the present cell early at dawn before anyone could notice, as her aunt only arrived late morning, after she had taken care of the laundry, washing, drying and ironing, was expected to leave late after lunch dressed in her coat, bonnet, dress, muffler, scarf, mittens and flowery apron. Looking at her matronly clothes, Toady remarked, "Only a good hide for Grandmother Wolf. Oh." He barked comically as she exchanged it with his overcoat, waistcoat, pocket and breeches. She chortled out a funny laugh as if she couldn't get over Mr. Toady as the stooge washerwoman. Mr. Toady briskly crawled under her skin, as if he pulled a rabbit out of a hat, so well like an actor or a magician as he had improvised his lines and dialogue the night before. As soon as the lizard guards noticed her leaving after brunch, they seized the opportune moment to chit-chat before they could open the gates of the prison, and she could exit the stage. Now, taking on the voice of an elderly woman, Mr. Toady started to speak very funnily, though it really didn't sound like what an uncivilized washerwoman would say. "Now I've gone loony with the chaff, surf and sap, soap bubbles and the rest of the linen," as he nervously giggled whilst saying his lines, then continuing outrageously spiel of comic stanza next, he rhymed poetry, bowing a curtsy, pinching his skirt and showing off a naked knee. Acting rather bold and cheeky, he ironed out his lines straight as a poker joker. You stoats and weasels, hares and bears, hawks and mares, ferrets, beavers and mice, officers and partners in crime, I've tried out on clotheslines and pegs. Pegs, pigs, I mean clothes pegs. He, she, toady chuckled. Every linen ironed out and folded neatly. I've served out the sponges and cleaned out the lounges. The prison breeches and dirt on collars, even stenches. Foul now without the slightest odor, I've washed and rinsed. Like I'm totally like a mop squeezed out. Well, as hardened criminal lizard guards, they burst into squeals of laughter, as well retorting back crudely at her poetical outburst of a song. She sung like a melody, laughing right amongst themselves.
Ha 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 ha! Ho hum ha! What a loony-toony washerwoman of a mop squeezed out!
With loud guffaws and jibes at the poor woman, none other than the comical stooge Mr. Toady of Toad Hall Mansion, the officer hoodlums brashly commented.
We didn't know you learned to sing poems like a scholar would say jokes on a washerwoman course.
Mr. Toad calmly retorted to the rowdy lizard jesters, a cock and bull story which was certainly true only in Toad Hall washroom, by all respected toads and family. Oh, I turned bathroom singer, washing linen all the time. I just couldn't show it to the children. She, I mean Mr. Toady in disguise, joked at the rascals, punning. Wouldn't you want my farewell kiss? And secretly sickened with the revolting idea of sparing such fools a fairy kiss, fools rushing in where angels fear to tread. Fancying himself wearing a writer's fool's cap, meant for angels of Venus from their mercy seat to shower upon everyone their sweet kisses, like the loony washerwoman from Mars, supposedly that Mr. Toady donned a dunce cap upon her head for giving away angels' kisses. For you see, the daughter to washerwoman Jennifer had always reserved them a naughty kiss before she left the prison gates, the little secret told by her niece Gretel. The rocks of lizard officers not sparing washerwoman Mr. Toad in disguise, remarked cheekily.
Now then, surely would we not ask for a cochical kiss like you usually do before you leave?
Do unto others as you do to yourself. Toady pacified, whispering to himself secretly. Do and do, so and so. Here I go to fly a fairy kiss with my fairy wings high above the prison gates. He had practiced a fly kiss in his dream in front of his heirloom, 3-faceted Victorian vanity mirrors. Then spitting out on the ground with Mudgetus pies, he smiled again so that they couldn't see his strong revolt and disgust to cover up his mocks. The forbidden kiss of the fairy task he had to perform, bravely shinning up, he extended his knees and bulky draped washerwoman body, encircling his arms around their necks, giving a kiss like a frog prince to each of the 2 tall lizard officers or patrol guards on their stretchy reptile skin dewlaps and burning dry scaly cheeks, and a matronly cuddle shoulder to shoulder. Mr. Toady assessed the danger, as if in mortal combat of betrayal with kisses and hugs. She would be he, she, or they, Mr. Toady concluded to himself, losing self on the bafflement of his disguise. After a smashing performance, pinching his little dress and apron up, he was in for a pleasant surprise in the end of a very dark tunnel. At last, there was light. Then he heard the wicket gate in the great outer door click behind him. He heaved a sigh of relief, and the riffraff of the shaft audience, stern lizard policeman, disappeared from sight as if the strange nightmare had ended. He soon ventured out late afternoon by a narrow lane in the direction of the train station. He heard the chug-chugging of the chugging steam engine train. Aha, luck almighty, luck at last. Hoping to remove 3 cents for the ticket to Toad Hall from his pocket strings, however, he realized he had forgotten to remove the thick-lined wallet from his waistcoat pocket, leaving also his long overcoat, breeches, stained clock, all in hands of Miss Gretel. Oh, sighed poor Mr. Toady. No money at all to pay for my train ride. Any time now the chief of police and the rest officers will come looking for me. I have to think of something quick. Then he saw an old, strict, straight-postured rooster get inside with a crocodilian of baby chick kindergarteners holding an immense foot ruler to correct them, hesitating to begin to beg before the old teacher, maybe the principal, in the voice of good old washerwoman. Please, dear Mr. Rooster, could you give me your ticket? I've lost all my possessions and have no money to travel. I need to get home and prepare a meal for my old husband. You see, my grandchildren are, oh dear, too small to handle his dire needs, cooking his dinner and giving his medicines on time. And my married daughter, her husband, ran away with a weasel. She's heartbroken and can't handle family. The stern old Mr. Rooster replied to Mr. Toady. Get away, washerwoman, and let the children pass. Snidely remarking, you poor lady. Mr. Toady hated the comment and was thoroughly miffed by the rude roaster. He surely could have spared his ticket to washerwoman, Mr. Toady, thought overwhelmed Mr. Toad in his poor dizzy dazed head. As big drops of tears fell on his cheeks one by one, it could fill a huge washing tub. The pussycat engine driver, on the way to the engine room, luckily spotted the washerwoman lady bawling out loudly and began to question her quite innocently.
What may the matter be, dear little lady? Could I be of any help? You seem to be the washerwoman of the prison.
He recognized the scarf, bonnet, flowery apron and matronly dress which was given only to the prison washerwoman who travelled daily by his car engine, because the pussycat engine driver had an immense handlebar moustache that twirled upwards like curvy ribbons. Mr. Toady addressed him as Mr. Pussycat Handlebars. Mr. Toady tried to hammer out the same story about his husband being very old, her heartbroken daughter, whose husband left her for a weasel, and his grandchildren not being able to look after the doughty man, playing with matches, upsetting lamps, the little innocents and quarrelling, he added, and going on generally. Oh dear me, what am I to do, Mr. Pussycat Handlebars? Do let me get into the train. The train driver, befuddled by his piteous lamentations, obliged to help her out. There were only 30 minutes left for him to strain out the coals into the furnace of the old train, saying to the woman,
If only you washed my dirty linen, there!
And handed over a load from inside the cab of the engine. But poor Toady was all he could really take, and trusting the kind-hearted engine driver Mr. Pussycat Handlebars, poured out his heart, telling out all real truth. That in fact he was the smart and famous Mr. Toad of Toad Hall, not the silly stooge of washerwoman he acted out to be, and had made an erroneous error to borrow somebody else's car, and the bargain had been sentenced a rigorous imprisonment of 12 months. Then he rattled on, assuming his own croaky, crackling voice. Please, Mr. Engine Master Pussycat Handlebars, have mercy on me. I promise I've changed for the better. Let me on your train. The police would come barging after me any moment now and take me back to the grisly dungeon. The engine driver felt very sorry for the infamous Mr. Toady of Toad Hall Mansion and told him to hop inside the cab of the engine, but instructed him that in some distance after he started fueling hot coal into the furnace, they would enter into a dark tunnel. He would make the big engine halt and soon Mr. Tory would have to take a leap into the wild wood beyond. The engine driver knew as much the police would be on the next train following them in a thief-police chase behind the train that Mr. Tory boarded, and started the engine just in time, fueling the coal into its burning furnace, right from the oven of the car engine cab and into the fire. Rather, from the fire to the furnace, and from furnace into the fire, taking on the lashings like a scapegoat washing woman wash her dirty linen in public, covered in black soot of coal dust as the steam engine furiously let out black smoke through its chimney, in clouds amassing above the dark sky, naturally with a silver lining. For soon the train began to wind down like an immense, shiny green caterpillar, going towards a windy dark tunnel, where soon Mr. Tory would jump as instructed by the engine master. At that very moment, he heard the Hound Baskerville sergeant of police and the patrol guard mazes storm into the station. They barged inside, whistling their whistles, waving halberds, armed in their helmets with their truncheons. Detectives like in Bond 007 with the revolvers, walking sticks, and snarling, bloodthirsty trained bulldog hounds. It was too late. The engine had begun to rattle and roll down with its chimney's song, shuck shuck, shuck shuck, shuck shuck, at a great pace, making its way forward, rattling and rolling towards a long, dark tunnel, as if it was aware of being pursued by the next caterpillar steam engine following behind, rattling its wheels on the railway tracks till finally it was inside the long, windy tunnel, and miserable Mr. Tory, crouching under coal dust, stood up and waved goodbye to the kind engine driver from its wide door as it gently halted. He was experienced enough to take a long triple jump, somersaulting into the wild woods yonder, still wearing the scarf, dress, mittens and apron of the washerwoman. He wondered to himself how he would make it out of the woods, when suddenly a large owl hooted by his shoulder, making fun, a low laugh,
Ho, ho, ho!
teasing poor old Tory's black sooty face and attire, still incessantly loofing and hooting hooty-ninnies.
2 wheat, 2 hoots! Ha, ha, ho!
As if he didn't care 2 hoots what poor Mr. Tory thought of it, loofing, laughing and loafing on slender bough of the hollow tree. Once he met a fox, who stopped and looked at him from head to foot in a sarcastic sort of way, and said,
Hello, washerwoman! I guess you've got my hide, grandmama, grandmama! Washing somebody's dirty linen again! You should return grandmother her apron strings, dress, scarf, bonnet, mufflers and mittens. Haven't you finished laundry? It's half a pair of socks and a pillowcase short. Red Riding Hood is waiting. Mind you, it doesn't occur again.
and swaggered off sniggering. Toad looked about for a stone to fling at the foxy creature, but could not succeed in finding one, which vexed him more than anything. At last, hungry, cold and tired, he sought shelter under the whispering willow tree, with its dead branches and leaves, made himself as comfortable as he could, and slept soundly till the next morning dawned. Migrating, hibernating seafarers ahoy! Wayfarers all and Mr. Water Ratty. Migration to green pastures and hibernation to underground holes with rice, barley, oats, nuts, berries and conkers and capers filled their stacked treasuries of the field mice, gerbils and squirrels, for soon the winter the ploughing and tractors would make way through the fields. It was time to hibernate into their little gayals like prisoners. Even the birds migrated to the south shores, their brilliant fantails decked like a jubilee, ready to get set and go, with a bullet shot that rang like a jarring disturbance by the hunters, pointing rifles at the ducks, pheasants and the cocks of the Murray fields. Most of them desired to see the south, where the end of misery of the cold west would turn to green passports of joy and freeing encumbrances. All in one flight of birds of feathers flocking together Even along the way he met the seafarer mouse who spoke at length about his salty sea adventures, like Robin Hood, Christopher Columbus rat, even a Vasco da Gama Portuguese rat explorer, a great Emperor Napoleon rat with his fleet of ships, or giant Gulliver mouse traveling to the land of tiny Lilliputs, who in fact was a seafaring sailor, shipwrecked and marooned on an island full of midgets the size of 6 inches, who at first wished to tie him with magic hops and bindweed and starve him to death, but later rejoiced when he saved the Lilliputians from the Blesfusidian invasion. A laugh indeed for so silly a battle presumably invented, over which way would be the right side to break an egg. Stopped in time by giant Gulliver mouse by dragging the Blesfusidian ships to Lilliput. In gratitude, the Emperor of Lilliput rewarded the Brobdingnagian Gulliver the title of Nardoc Mouse. It all seemed the thumb puppet play of Mesos and rat tails away when the jocund seafarer mouse composed himself a poetic seafaring bard of a rat. Poetry he had made up himself, and profitably had sold many copies of his captivating solid illustrated sea books about the Lilliputian goblins and the state rock giant frog that he gifted Mr. Walter Ratty after removing it from his blue satchel. Painted with anchors, stars and cheesy moons, he carried everywhere a dozen copies of his fabulous, fantastical poetry book with his signed autographs by a seafaring rat, which he always carried like a chunk of magic blue moon cheese and a loaf of stale bread everywhere. He usually sold them for 3 cents each, as they were quite popular with young sailor nieces, even ferret lasses and jubilee lads. When his ship voyages touched harbour, his splendid composition on rock climbers that Mr. Walter Ratty with his reedy spectacles called Grandpa's rosy lorgnettes, starting to read out loud, turning the pages one by one very joyously, and spooning each verse into a mountain of a molehill, mouthful sea sailing adventure, piece by piece, stanza by stanza. Rock climbers. With rock logs, helmets, rock harnesses, rock torchlights on heads, ice axes, hammers, climbing ropes, shoe slings and haversacks climbed atop the zealous rock climber. Hobgoblins one by one barking with chalk the slate grey rock, clambered up the rocks of an old soiled ankle, then again an old withered kneecap with rope they lugged and hook anchored again to the top. They scrambled menacing heights further and further higher to the colossal clouds, swung from a beard long and luscious like shrubs bulging out from a shin, its nooks and crevices as they shinned up held again, a long hooked nose from up the bedraggled mossy shin, tossed upon it a rope till they were quite steady. Where giant moles lay buried, they climbed further from a straggling lip, from the noose clamped to their belts, hung from a brow bushy as hell, as a scraggy shore. Great pools appeared bright red like burning ruby embers, sometimes series irises of pupils, so big like planets, they got bigger and bigger, revolving inside its riverbeds. As they glanced staggering right into them, the dazed little hobgoblins looked askance at those rolling round and round giant planets, bulging in their huge sockets, reeling, contorting, writhing, dilating and contracting. Indeed, they climbed a mighty and strong monstrous giant. The wee hobgoblins played around him, his molded contour and irregular outline or silhouette against the rising or dimming sun. Their many farm animals, the moose, cliff goats, rams, horses and calves, gleefully bleated, mooed, whinnied and gloated all around them, whilst they whispered, then sang songs, mountain cleft notes and shoulder cavities their bars on their hurdy-gurdies and harmonicas, even playing sometimes rock and roll with their guitars, sometimes condescending the dreaded beasts that visited such a mountain giant. Vultures of prey, bald eaglets, the wee hobgoblins turned them friendly neighbors instead of foes by offering them their chicken offals, gizzards, livers, hearts, entrails, even bone marrow. A few beautiful pots of the plants, creeping vines, hibiscus, poison ivy, shamrock, and ice cream flowers peeped from pockets. They would keep on their windowsills, tall chimneys, huffed and puffed rings of smoke from thatched roofs of the teeny huts. Through their teeny windows upon a steep mountain cliff, alas, we have settled, the wee hobgoblins sighed. They could see rivers, valleys, dales, castles, tombs, cathedrals, spires, mountains, temples, aeroplanes, and catacombs. Oh, what a splendid outcome! When the giant snorted, opened wide his jaws back again before he awoke, they scurried right into his pockets. All the 300 tiny hobgoblins lived right in his grassy waistcoat and scarred pant pockets, under the bright sun furnace. Toasted toes and fingers huddled warmly in their coverlets, duvets, and blankets. The giant's great green gauntlet still once again he stood like thunderous clap, towering tall from up his withered boots, high atop his steep mountain cliffs. A precipice deep and dangerous soon fell the funny hobgoblins from inside his tattered waistcoat and pant pockets. Their huts and dwellings scattered about just here and there, whilst it took a mighty dip and splash into a riverbed, gushing beneath his ankles for a routine daytime scrub and wash. Now their thatched roofs sailed in his pants and waistcoat pockets. Another flood! They sighed again, grumbled and complained. Once more the funny hobgoblins clambered and struggled, shinning right to the top. Trekked, wobbled and hobbled back again, of the mountain giant's pinnacle right above his matted forehead that creased with great big furrow lines. This time swung with the help of his charcoal dreadlock braids, lunged forth, his ropes mighty and strong, returning under the shade of his sunny, balmy brimmed hat. Hale and heartily once more again, he never took it off until the flood that threatened receded, and the giant reversed its footsteps to stand strong as a gargantuan mountain cliff, worn out even a few strands of his waistcoat and pant pockets, a straggling threadbare hoe and a hem on its edges still, like a boat had sailed the 300 wee hobgoblins, ahem, sighed the great big giant. Not the tiny hobgoblins again. The tiny inhabitants of the mountain giant once again populated his rocky ladder and terrain high up the strange mountain cliff. Did the rock climbers climb and shin up again, living off the breadcrumbs he stored every now and then in his patchwork pockets. Fruits, cheese and meat chunks of variety he would keep in some, even spare ribs, pork chops, or beef fillet, sometimes with their fishing hooks and tackles. We hobgoblins ferreted and fished scrupulously. Fishes and crabs from his nearby ankles, from inside the ponds and riverside where his dirty mud-stained galoshes dipped. He would love desserts, this friendly giant, as big as sugared kernels and flakes of corn he would pour in milk, his daily gruel, humble porridge, homely grit and bran. Those he battered with his bludgeon and hammer to make corn samples. Sometimes he would offer for his tiny hamlet of wee hobgoblins, living in his daylight dungeons, working nighttime scullions prepared the rare meats and luncheons, with the rock giant's scraps and tidbits. The rock climbers summoned one and all its wee hobgoblins in the tiny hamlet, proud of their achievements, whilst the busy hobgoblins singing a valour song for their steep cliff mountain hero, the gargantuan giant, upon a steep mountain cliff, where they lived happily and peacefully again. The voice reverberated, echoed and reverted back again their glorious song, "Hail the mighty rock climbers of the mountain giant!" Crinkled and wrinkled his mud-craked sand and loins, whilst they hoisted with his own petard the 300 wee hobgoblins, rock climbers in search of truth and wisdom. We climbed the rocks to the mountain tops and guessed we live on a giant as mighty as a saint, who willingly let us wee hobgoblins dwell on his spectacular terrain. Of his staid rock giant rock, veiled valleys and mountain tops, sighed a seafaring rat. Expressing his gratitude, Mr. Water Ratty thanked and gratefully shook the adventurous seafarer's hands, saying to him, "Well done, amigo." The seafarer rat smiled and still continued about his many encounters on his globetrots around the world, when in fact all his seafaring voyages began with famous explorers, including voyages of great examples like Christopher Columbus, John Cabot, Samuel de Champlain, and many others to obscure foreign lands, and meeting many usurpers like British, colonists, he further rambled. About their fairy-like colonies, he visited especially the land of milk and honey, India, and vast acres of Hungary and Budapest along the Danube River, Turkey, Hispaniola and Zimbabwe, Slovenia and Slovakia, Czechoslovakia, Switzerland, Portugal and Denmark after independence had turned into Commonwealth nations, and their rainbow flags hoisted upon their flagellate flagpoles. Their lentil tails had spread their roots, mostly globe-trotting by sailing with sailors, the tall tails of ships. With Vikings and buccaneers, he undertook like a water rat, seafarer, or water hog of the seas, ship ahoy, and many anchors lowered and destinations mapped as would explorers do commissioned by royal patronage. Brainwashed by the strange bonding spirit of the seafarer buccaneer rat, he thought they had made such a good team together, who at last sadly bid him a farewell adieu. Off on his next seafaring bon voyage grimly resulted in restless Mr. Water Ratty deciding to migrate like a seafarer, and sulking over losing comradeship of his dearest feathered plummet friends, all who had migrated into the south shores. He returned drooping, despondent and downtrodden, all set to take on his gauntlets and oar into oblivion, maybe to some southern shore, to be lost in tales of folklores like the infallible seafaring mouse trapped in a water-bound ship, or like a gallant explorer in his many explorations like a chickpea horse-grump or a monkey nut, gallivanting into its unknown obscurity, uncharted territory yonder turpentine and gallipot of blue ink, entering through the stern end of a hatch, down a large blue ship, into a future that was blind to reason or stability. He returned to comfortable Mr. Mole N's little underground door hatch and knocked at the top. Rat-a-tat-a-tat, knockety knock knock, to the very bottom of it. "Who's there?" Mr. Molly asked from deep inside. "It's me," answered Water Ratty, rather forlorn and dejected over losing his seafaring buccaneer rat companion, an old and experienced sea dog unlike a landlubber like him. All his hibernating wildwood critters and his fanciful free-flight friends didn't mind to join them. If he couldn't beat them though, soon Mr. Molly appeared, opening his door latch and welcomed Mr. Water Ratty, who was trying to explain his raw gut feelings of exploration, like the harmless birds, bees and water rat seafarer of migration, hibernation and sea-sailing buccaneers. He had almost packed his little suitcase full of what little he possessed, his neat blue suit, his pink cardigans, priceless bows, shirts and neckties, his velvet carpet flip-flops, leather moccasins and huge gumboots. He had made up his mind and explained to Mr. Molly, all in a daze as if like water rat washed and sloshed high in spirits. "I'm off like all good restless water rats should be, away on a mast and a sail, away with oars and paddles, away on the jesty sea." Mr. Molly, surprised at the sudden, tear-jerking and over-exaggerated expectations of Mr. Water Ratty to be a water rat seafarer, like the one he spoke about he met on a wild rendezvous to some port excursion, on his way by the timid fields, was totally flabbergasted, and pinned the creature down on all his fours.
"Don't be foolish, Water Ratty. Now calm down. Nothing should make you so distressed as news of the water-bound or the migratory wayfarers and the sailor stories, even the herbivores and the hibernators."
Then taking off his muddy gumboots and woolly cashmere coat, he settled him hobbling to the sofa and made him put his feet up. Mr. Water Ratty soon in a daze fell into a deep trance-like sleep, moaning and muttering strange slogans of the sea and the seamen. "Hooray, bon voyage, ship ahoy! Booyah, cheers!" As the anchor was lowered and he began fantasizing his unrealistic chimera of a big bubble blown into a sweet dream from his restless turmoil, the changing seasons of the field trip experience, like a carnivore beast consumed by ravenous hunger the next day, the same old mouse With the voracious appetite of a sturdy hound canine, Mr. Walter Ratty would come to his senses finally. After Mr. Molly prepared him his favorite dish of mussels, a pot of cherry pina colada mocktail, and an olive margarita cocktail to savor with toasted prawns and squid calamaris on toothpicks. Those Mr. Otter had surprised Mr. Molly the day when Mr. Walter Ratty had got out on one of his unforgettable field trips. The lulling lullaby and the disappearing shrills of the migrating, hibernating and seafaring creatures of the Whispering Willows. Only its boughs and branches stirred murmurs and whispers by the Soda Bay Inlet beach. He would jot down with sea ink in one of his journals a poem that Mr. Molly loved to scribble about Mr. Walter Ratty. Mad rush of adrenaline and his soaring ambition plunging into depths of deep waters. The voyage of Walter Rat with blue sea ink, of course. He plumbed his composition ditty.
You have now completed part 3 of The Whispering Willows. Continue with us into the final part of the story.